Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first of our parent and family webinars for our winter 2025 series. My name is Mikkel St. Germain, and I am the Director of Parent and Family Engagement. I'm so happy to have all of you with us today as we start off this series. I'm coming to you from Providence, Rhode Island, the Brown University campus on a very cold but beautiful snowy day. Our students are back. Our transfer students just walked through the gates, are the new ones who are joining us. So it's a great time on campus, and we're glad that you're here today to talk about study abroad with us. I have two wonderful colleagues with me who will go through all your questions about study abroad and have a nice presentation for you. But in the meantime, I do want to go over a few bits of business before we get started. The first is that, as I mentioned, this is a series, and all the webinars that we do are recorded and posted after they are aired. It takes us a couple days to get them posted, but they will show up on the same page where you registered. So if you have to cut out early or you want to refer back to it or share it with your student, you can do so at another time. Our other topics are going to be career services, managing academic pressure, and my favorite, commencement, which will come up next week. So I'll hope you will all join us for those as well. We have closed captioning, live closed captioning with us today. So if that's something that you would like to take advantage of, please just click the CC button at the bottom of your screen and those captions will appear. And if you have a question later on, we've collected a number in the registration and we're prepared to answer those, but you can feel free to add more questions as you think of them by using the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen that has that question mark. Right now, we have about 85 people on the webinar, and that number keeps climbing. So we will get this rolling. I want to introduce now my very knowledgeable and wonderful and collaborative colleagues. We have with us today Malik Blue, who is the Senior Associate Dean and Senior Associate Dean of the College for Study Abroad, and Adeline Wong, who's the Director of Global Partnerships and Programs. I'm going to have them take it away with their presentation, and then we will do a Q&A afterward. And then at the end, I'll have a 3-question survey for you, so I hope you stick around for that as well. We will be putting links in the chat that as they come along, but at this moment, I'd like to turn it over to Malik and Adeline. You guys take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Mikkel mentioned, my name is Malik Blue, and I'm the Senior Associate Dean for Study Abroad. And I'm joined here by my colleague, Adeline Wong, who will introduce herself in just a moment. But collectively, Adeline and I collaborate to support semester study abroad and summer study abroad for our students here on campus. So we have the distinct pleasure of welcoming students here on this campus, supporting them here from Providence, and then challenging them to see how it is that they can extend the open curriculum and embrace an international opportunity as a part of their undergraduate degree. So I'll turn it over to Adeline to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Adeline Wong. I'm the Director for Global Partnerships and Programs. And the way Malik and I work really closely together is, as you know, your students have many programs to choose from to go abroad. And that's where Malik's team comes in to help them select the best fit for what their needs are. But here at Brown, we actually run some of our own programs, which I will tell you a little bit about. So happy to talk a little bit more and happy to answer some of your questions.
Great. So I did want to kick us off by starting to talk a little bit about what we can expect today from our time together. So first, I'll handle some of the information about the sort of FAQs related to study abroad, the logistics of it, the types of opportunities that are available to our students. I'll give you an overview of what study abroad looks like here at Brown. Next, I'll spend some time talking about the benefits of study abroad. So why is it that your student might be interested in taking advantage of this opportunity? What developmental opportunities does this type of experience offer? And then we'll sort of talk about how it is that you, as a parent and a family member, might be able to offer support for students and how it is that we see your role in collaborating with us as supporters of students who are pursuing these opportunities. Next, Adeline will give us a program spotlight, so you get a little bit of an understanding of what the day-to-day might look like on a particular program, so that you can sort of envision what your students' experience might be. We'll talk about some initial next steps on how is it that you can encourage students to take that first step towards pursuing a study abroad experience. And then, of course, we'll carve out some time for questions at the end. And then, of course, as questions pop in throughout, Adeline and I will try to do our best to answer them as they become relevant as we're chatting. But there may be some that we'll leave for the end to sort of talk through in more detail. All right, so in terms of a snapshot of what semester study abroad looks like here at Brown, we send upwards of 20% of our undergraduate population abroad, which is really impressive considering that the national average is about 10%. So we send double the amount of students that most universities do in the United States, which is something that we're really proud of. Within our semester portfolio of study abroad programs, we have over 100 programs across 45 different countries. So as you can imagine, that's lots of options for students, and we really guide them through the process of reflecting on some of their goals and expectations of a study abroad experience and using that to help guide them to finding the program that's the right fit for them. Within that portfolio of 100 programs, 7 programs are actually administered by Brown, by Adeline's team, and she'll talk a little bit more about some of those programs, in particular the Casa Melbourne program. And another point that I wanted to highlight as it relates to the portfolio is the idea that we have programs that are available in a number of different languages, including English, if your students don't have another language of proficiency that they would be comfortable taking coursework in. So really the takeaway on this slide is that there's a different flavor of study abroad for every student based on their interests, needs, and passions. And it's a matter of spending time with an advisor on my team to be able to refine those goals and interests and then match those with an appropriate study abroad program. That again, all is taken into consideration as it relates to the academic priorities that the student has as well. So we take into account all of those different priorities. All right, so this next couple of slides is just FYI and just fun facts that I like to share. So one of the things we know is that we have students who are abroad 365 days a year. So in this very moment, in January, we have students who have just arrived on site to their study abroad programs for their spring semester. And we have some students who will be outbound. I wanted to share a little bit more in detail of where our students are this particular semester. So here on the screen, you'll see a heat map of where our students currently are or will soon be for the spring 2025 semester. So this particular semester, we have 245 students abroad. And within that participation of 245 students, we have students who are in 35 countries. And some of the programs actually span multiple countries. So that's another opportunity for students to have an experience of one semester of study abroad with multiple locations involved in that experience. So I say all this to say that our students are all over, and again, they spent a lot of time thinking about their goals as it relates to what it is that they want out of an experience to be able to find the program that's the right fit. So sometimes we get the question of what's the best study abroad program? There is no one best study abroad program, and we spend a lot of time talking with students about this fact. It's what's the best fit for you. And we sort of liken this sort of discovery of a study abroad program to this discovery of the right university. We consider this a sort of mini college search process within study abroad. And again, we have folks on our teams that are positioned to support students in thinking through their priorities to find the right fit. All right, so let's start with the sort of foundational basics of what it takes to become eligible to study abroad. The bar is pretty low because we want to encourage participation of study abroad. So we want to reduce as many barriers as possible for students to be able to participate. So we have a few simple eligibility criteria, which include being good academic and student conduct standing. And really that expectation is just to highlight the fact that we want to make sure that students have a solid foundation here on campus, familiarity with the degree programs here and their academic requirements. And with that foundation should be able to pursue a study abroad experience to complement what they've already started here at Brown. They also need to have a declared concentration, and that's in the same vein. We want to make sure that students have a solid picture and vision of where they're hoping to go so that study abroad can complement that vision. So students do need to declare a concentration prior to studying abroad. And then lastly, of course, they need that formal document that allows them to get permission to travel, which is a valid passport. So we encourage students who don't have passports as they start to engage with us to start that process, knowing that it takes a little bit of time to get the document prepared. But again, these are just the simple eligibility criteria. So at its core, study abroad, of course, is an academic experience, and that's something that we emphasize with all of our students. And we want to make sure that we say very clearly to families and parents as well that study abroad is really not a vacation of any sort. It's not, students, not, taking their academics seriously. All of our study abroad programs are academic oriented and credit bearing. So as students are studying abroad, they're still making progress towards degree, including being able to satisfy some of their concentration requirements. So part of the work that we do in curating our portfolio of study abroad programs is making sure that we offer programs that are curricularly aligned. That's to say that students can make academic progress as a part of their enrollment in a study abroad experience. So in a nutshell, what many of our study abroad experiences look like is our students going to a different country, sitting alongside some fellow peers, which may be other study abroad students, may be local students, and enrolling in coursework with the aim of earning and transferring credit back here at Brown, and in some cases, satisfying concentration requirements as well. In terms of the type of experience that students have on study abroad programs, it's not just the academics that becomes a core part of the experience, but all of the co-curricular and extracurricular activities that students engage with here on our campus. There's a different sort of form and flavor of that available on all of our study abroad programs as well. Again, I am highlighting the importance of the curricular considerations for study abroad. So the last note that I wanted to include on here is that we do also ask students to meet with their concentration advisors, who are the curricular experts for their particular concentration, to confirm how it is that coursework that they're planning to take abroad will apply to their degree program here at Brown. And then as another support for curricular integration and helping students stay on track towards degree, we allow students to take one remote course associated with Brown in those situations in which students have a specific course that they need to take to satisfy a concentration requirement. But again, we limit it to one course because we want to make sure that the bulk of the student study abroad experience is them immersed in the on-site aspects of the experience and not pulled too far away through remote coursework. All right, we frequently get this question of when to go abroad, similar to the question of what's the right study abroad program. The answer to this question is it depends on the student's priorities and needs as it relates to their academics. So for certain concentrations, the timing may work better for them to study abroad a little earlier in their time in the concentration. For other students, depending on the concentration, it may be a little bit later. So anytime after the student declares their concentration, they're eligible to study abroad, and they can do so up until their very last semester here at Brown. So in a nutshell, they can go abroad sophomore, junior, and senior year. Again, it's not a one size fits all. We have a lot of conversation with students in concert with their concentration advisors to figure out what the best timing is for them based on some of their other priorities and needs. It's also helpful to highlight the fact that we have so many different programs in different countries that have very different academic calendars. So although a student may be studying abroad during our spring semester, the dates may vary greatly. And Melbourne is a good example. And Adeline, perhaps you can talk a little bit about how the calendar is different and how that's a factor and consideration that students need to take into account as they think about other opportunities like summer internships or research or any other engagements that might take place in a time that's typically off for Brown students, but in the case of study abroad, they'll be enrolled in their study abroad program. All right. One of the other areas that we frequently get lots of questions about is related to finances and how to finance and fund a study abroad experience. One of the things that we're very proud of here at Brown is that from a financial perspective, students are able to have their financial aid packages travel with them. And from a financial perspective, the prospect is quite similar to what they expect here on campus. So we have a homeschool tuition model, which means that students continue to pay Brown tuition during that semester that they are abroad. And again, their aid packages apply during that term. The difference in the sort of costs in this area is really related to the out-of-pocket costs. So while students are away from campus, they're not going to continue to pay housing here on campus. The housing costs and other out-of-pocket costs, related to meal plans and things of that sort, are going to be dependent on their program. In some cases, the cost of living and the out-of-pocket costs are less than what they expect here in Providence. And in those cases, students will be able to receive a refund if they have enough aid to cover that. In other cases, when there is a sort of gap between the cost that it typically costs to enroll here at Brown compared to their study abroad program, we do support students in applying for external funding, which may include external scholarships and et cetera. So again, the takeaway here is that we do not want finances to be a deterrent. And for many students, and for all students, we want study abroad to be something that's financially accessible. So if you or your student have questions related to how the finances break down, we spend a lot of time with students having them understand the budget of their particular program, especially as it relates to estimating some of the out-of-pocket costs, which can be a little abstract to students. And we're happy to answer those questions for you as well. And we do this in great partnership with the financial aid office as well, so that students can take a look at their financial aid package and look at the cost of their program to make sure that they have a solid understanding of how the finances will break down. I also wanted to spend a little time talking about the benefits of study abroad. So I told you the what of the experience, sort of what it might look like for students, but this is really answering the why. Why is it that a student might pursue study abroad? So here on the screen, you'll see 10 benefits of study abroad. And the primary ones that I really want to highlight are the ones related to skill development. So what we know about study abroad experience is that we call it experiential education because it's the idea that students are navigating different experiences through intercultural dynamics and interactions in which they're building critical skills that are highly valued by employers. So as we think about why it is a student might be able to, or why they might consider studying abroad, is because we believe that study abroad offers a unique opportunity to hone some skills related to intercultural communication, as it relates to independence, as it relates to being able to collaborate across difference, learn a different language. These are all things that students, when they're being thoughtful about it, can articulate to employers to say, I built this really great skill set through a study abroad experience, and I'm ready to apply it to either a future degree program and or a future job. So I want to say that the opportunity for study abroad is really rooted in this idea that there's a transformative aspect of this work where students are able to grow and develop critical skills and networks around the world. And as someone who's attending as a parent or family member of a student here at Brown, you may be asking yourself, how is it that I can consider my role in the landscape of the support that a student has available to them? So I always say that it takes a village. Just in general, as students engage on campus, there are lots of people who are there to support students. And our hope is that as students are pursuing opportunities, that they remain in the driver's seat. And what I mean by that is that we information share and we advise students collectively on campus, and we encourage them to make the decisions. So we provide them with the host of information so that they can make informed decisions, and we support them at the various steps of decision making. So as it relates to the folks who are available to support students here on campus, there are folks on my team who serve in advising capacities to help students discover study abroad programs, find programs that align with their academic needs. There are folks on Adeline's team who help introduce students to a different different Brown Global Center, get them familiar with a little bit of the cultural context, and while they're abroad, continue to be supported. We have colleagues who advise from an academic perspective on concentration requirements. We also have financial aid counselors. And then, of course, there's you as family members, trusted folks who really do serve in advising capacities, the way that I see it, where students are reaching out to you and saying, hey, you're my family, I'm considering this thing, what do you think about it? And we want to highlight the idea that a huge part of study abroad is the aspect of being independent. And we want to encourage you to understand that students are meant to navigate some level of discomfort as a part of this intercultural experience. So it's not by design that we create challenge for students, but as a student gets to know a different culture and a new environment, it's natural that there's a point of friction and challenge. And as a parent and someone who's supporting a student, there's sometimes this tendency to want to intervene and help students untangle some of that. And we say that that's welcome in a certain way, and that we want you to counsel the student with how it is that they can navigate that, and trust that there's, again, a whole host of folks who are in support roles to help students navigate it. But there is an expected element of challenge, discomfort, difficulty that's associated with this experience. And we're okay with it because we know that that's where the development and the growth happens. So there's a little bit of an ask here, and it's that we want to ask you to be our partners in encouraging students to lean into the grit of some of the aspects of the study abroad experience, knowing that there's a really great developmental opportunity through that grit. And that's not to say that we want students to sit and suffer and challenge, but we want them to embrace it to a certain degree to sort of work through developing some really solid skills. All right, Adeline, I want to turn it over to you to highlight a little bit about some of our programs and how it is that they might see the day-to-day for their students.
Thank you, Malik. So as Malik has already mentioned, we actually administer 7 different programs during the semester around the world. So in both fall and spring, I have programs in Bologna, Paris, Barcelona, Dublin, Granada, Havana, and Melbourne. You'll see that 2 of my programs are called Brown in Bologna, Brown in Paris. So that's pretty clear. And then we have these ones called the Casa Barcelona, Casa Dublin, etc. programming. This is actually really exciting. This is a consortium that Brown is part of and actually leads right now. It's a consortium for advanced studies abroad, where we bring together students from 12 different universities. They are the Harvards, the Penns, the Cornells, Columbias, names that you would recognize very quickly once you go to the CASA website. And the idea is that we provide a high touch, really rigorous academic experience for all the students coming to the CASA programming. And you also then in that situation have lots of networking opportunities of students who are beyond the Brown programs. But in many of these programs, there are a lot of Brown students as well. I will also touch a little later on our global summer programs. I've seen a couple of questions on them already. I've tried to answer a couple as we've gone along, but I will also happy to address some of them as we go. So I'll spend just a little bit of time talking about Casa Melbourne as my program spotlight. I change up these every time we talk. So today I'm talking about Melbourne because it is 90 degrees in Melbourne right now, not here. And I've been watching the Australian Open a lot. So Malik, could you advance to the next slide, please? Thank you. Right. So Casa Melbourne, a really quick overview of this. This is actually one of our newer programs. We started this program after the pandemic, so a lot of lessons have been learned from there. But this is a program which allows students to study at the University of Melbourne, which is the top university in Australia. Next slide, please, Malik. I'm very much a visual person, so hopefully this gives you a sense. Melbourne is one of the world's top most livable, walkable cities, best coffee culture you'll experience. And the University of Melbourne itself is a university we are very proud of working closely with because it is among the best. We have students going there and studying anything from neuroscience to theater, to art, to physics, to biology, and it has been a phenomenal experience. One of the best things that we've had going with Melbourne is that they have opened up all their research labs and internships to our students, welcoming them. So I've had students doing research in places like the Center for Neuroscience Hub or something like that. I've had students doing the Australian International Politics centers, just on every single topic that every student has had an interest in. We've been able to find them an experience that isn't just academic, but it's applied. So you have students working alongside sort of the best researchers around the world that are based in Melbourne. I'll say a little bit also about the calendar while we're here, since Malik pulled it up. It is true that Melbourne actually has a rather different calendar. And again, to Malik's point about different, sometimes this creates some kind of a challenge. So what is interesting about Melbourne is that in the spring semester, they actually begin in February and then they end off in the end of May. So really fits within our concept of the American academic calendar. In the fall, however, we start earlier. We start in July and we end in November. So this is one that I always want to say, if you want your student back for Thanksgiving, this is the program that will get you there. And also great for students who are interested in taking up internships and all that during the winter period as well. So something to think about. As for CASA Melbourne specifically, I talked a lot about the academics, and I'm happy to go into any of those questions as well. But some of the things that I really love about Melbourne, one is when you're cold, they're warm. When they're warm, you're cold. It's just a perfect, it's a perfect difference for today. And if you have students who are very interested in sports, so I live in New England. I know what sports culture feels and can feel like. They are a little bit more than New England when it comes to sports over in Melbourne. So as I mentioned, I was watching the Melbourne Open, the Australian Open in Melbourne that's happening right now. And then I think this picture on your left that you see in front of you is our students going for Aussie rules football. Kind of crazier than American football, which is amazing. But it's a huge sports culture, and a lot of our students who are in any way interested in sports, they have learned to love this space. I have to put a picture of surfing because Australia is surfing. But students have options to do a lot of these different kinds of activities, co-curricular and otherwise. And again, I included a kangaroo because everybody wants to see a kangaroo from Australia. But we do actually have imbued in our entire programming a deep sense of academics. So it's not just about the fun, but what are you learning that is just different? So for example, our students here, the student that you see with the kangaroo, we're actually at a wildlife sanctuary and really learning about the impact on climate change and the ecosystem changes that they have on our on the flora and fauna of Australia, which is actually quite different. I think that's what I have for Melbourne, and then I think we can talk a little bit about summer, which I know many of you have questions with. I've met many of you in some of the parent weekends and all the different expos that happen when your students come in. And so many of you ask me about summer. So we are into our second year of summer programming. This is so last summer 24 was our first, and this summer 25 we're offering 4 programs. These programs rotate from year to year because the way we've really conceptualized it is to have faculty think about multidisciplinary courses that they can offer to students that have no prerequisites. So some of you were asking about language or the concentrations. The point of these programs for us is to introduce students to the idea of study abroad if they have any concerns about it, have never left the country before, or perhaps cannot leave the country during the semester and would like to try an experience to see what works. We change this up every year, so always keep checking in. If you have a first-year student or sophomore student, you'll see these come up. These programs are all led by Brown faculty. And travel ranges from 2 to 4 weeks, depending on each program. You'll see that London and China are our longest programs this summer. They're about 3 weeks long, and the other 2 are about 2 weeks, about 10 days to 14 days long, depending on travel. There is a slightly different financial aid package related to this, but financial aid generally does travel. I know somebody asked a question in the Q&A that I tried to answer very quickly. But please ask your students to talk to the financial aid office, because they're working out how to position the financial aid in time for them to start applying and to do all that. Applications are open right now. We're getting a lot of applications for all these programs. So get your student to start looking at this if they haven't yet. These are obviously open to all students in any class year.
All right, thank you, Adeline. I'll take it over from here. So as we're sort of getting to the tail end of the presentation, I wanted to share a few tangible things that you might be able to take to your students and nudge a little bit to encourage them to take the first few steps in terms of planning for study abroad. One of the things that we highlight in study abroad planning is the idea that early planning makes for better planning and a more seamless match as it relates to finding the right study abroad program. So we encourage students, even if they're a first-year student, to start thinking about study abroad now, having conversations with both us and their concentration departments so that they can find the experience that aligns best with what they're hoping to get out of study abroad. So the number one thing that we, of course, ask students to do is to declare their concentration, and as they do so, communicate to their concentration advisors and include in their academic plans the fact that they do want to study abroad. That way, their concentration advisor can help them map out the coursework for their overall time here at Brown, such that they can account for courses that they will be able to transfer from their study abroad program. Next, the very first step that we ask all students to do as it relates to study abroad planning is to attend a session that we offer a few times a week, both virtually and in person, called Study Abroad 101. So this is an in-person or virtual advising session where we give students the foundational information of what they need to know to start the planning process for study abroad. So it answers a lot of the frequently asked questions as it relates to funding, as it relates to concentration credit, and planning from that perspective. And then from there, when students have that foundation, we encourage them to have a one-on-one advising session with either a study abroad professional advisor or a peer advisor to learn a little bit more about the process and programs. And we help them, again, guide through some reflections to help them identify their goals as it relates to this type of experience. We also encourage students to peruse our website and get to know the portfolio of study abroad programs. So we can drop the link in just a little bit for our application portal, which has all of our 100+ programs. And we encourage students to just spend some time looking through the programs, using the filters to identify either regions of interest or languages of interest, or particular curricular offerings that might be appealing to them through our website. And then from there, coming to meet with an advisor with any additional questions they have so that they can formally start the application process. And I'll get into timeline a little bit more in detail as it relates to this upcoming fall 25 semester, but just as a general reminder of how our timelines typically work for study abroad is that we want to, the way that the application timelines work is that if you're hoping to study abroad next semester, let's say, you should really be meeting with us at the beginning of the prior term. The safest bet is to rewind a year and start meeting with us starting at that point, but at minimum at the beginning of the semester prior to when your student is hoping to go abroad is when they should start engaging with us and putting together an application. I'll make it a little bit more concrete in a moment by sharing the timeline for our upcoming application cycle, or our current application cycle, I should say. So we, for fall 25 and full year 25-26 programs, we opened applications back in December, and the application will be due February 1st as a priority deadline. We encourage students to apply by the priority deadline to make sure that they are able to get into their desired study abroad program. This date is slightly earlier than other universities, which gives our students a little bit of a a leg up as it relates to admissions for their particular program. And then the final deadline for fall 25 is March 1st. And I will also say that the deadlines that I just mentioned related to fall are also the same deadlines that are for summer 25 study abroad experiences as well. Um, just talking a little bit more about the rest of the process. After students apply to study abroad and they get approved, there's also an additional aspect of formally committing to go on the study abroad experience. So we continue to advise students even after they've applied. We help answer any questions that they or you might have to help them be able to make the decision to formally decide to commit to move forward with their study abroad plans. For fall 25, that deadline is April 4th. And again, I'm highlighting that just so that you have an understanding of the different milestones as it relates to helping students prepare to study abroad the following semester. Applications for spring 2026, which feels like it's really far away, is not so far away in the study abroad world. Those applications will open up this May, so at the end of this academic year, which positions students well to be able to work on applications towards the end of the spring semester and throughout the summer. And applications will be due towards the end of the summer as students are preparing to come back to campus. All right, so I know that there are a number of questions in the chat. So this was our formal presentation. And again, we wanted to create time and space for questions. Adeline, were there any questions in the chat that you had your eye on that you wanted to just live share responses to? I haven't been able to keep track of the chat too closely.
I think actually Mikkel was going to start guiding us through some of them, so I'll let her take that.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Thank you very much for your presentations. There's a lot of information, and just to reiterate that this recording, along with the slides, will be available in a few days if you need to refer back to them. Malik, I want to start with a question that's sort of along the lines of you were talking about. There is a little discomfort involved with study abroad, and that's intentional too. It's a skill students need to learn. But of course, parents have all of the concerns about health and safety. So can we talk a little bit about health and safety? We had a question that came in about how we determine if a country is safe to visit or not. Specifically, one of our registration questions was about Israel. Will students be able to study in Israel? And then how are you making those decisions, whether it's this year or in future years, about where students can end up?
That's a really great question. Yes. And to your point, we encourage the discomfort, but safety and the health of our students is number one. So we're very fortunate at Brown that we have a colleague who's dedicated to monitoring global health, safety, and security conditions throughout the world on a daily basis. This person's on call and is well connected with security resources. We also have a resource called International SOS that we're subscribed to that sends us alerts. So if I were to look at my inbox now, I get alerts as it relates to protests, as it relates to civil unrest, as it relates to health conditions that might change. And these are things that both Adeline and I are monitoring, and we have a colleague whose full-time job is to monitor these things. As it relates to how it is that we assess whether or not a program or participation in study abroad in a particular location is viable and safe. We have a committee, it's called GTRAC, the Global Travel Risk Assessment Committee. Both Adeline and I sit on that committee along with the colleague I was just referring to who chairs the committee. And when metrics related to, when metrics from the World Health Organization or the Department of State shift and change in locations where we have programs, we actually convene as a committee to say, have these conditions changed such that this environment is no longer safe for our students to be? In a situation in which things change pretty quickly while students are abroad, there may be situations in which we will suspend study abroad programs and bring students back. Those situations are quite rare. As it relates to ongoing global conflict, particularly in the case of Israel, one of the ways in which we've approached this here at Brown is that each application cycle, we've opened applications allowing students to apply to study abroad in Israel. And at the same time, we give the disclaimer that the conditions at the moment are quite tense and at the moment not available for students to go based on the security risk. As students are applying, we tell them to have a backup program so that they can pivot quickly should programming be canceled. And as a result, as they prepare for their study abroad experience, we tell them that they should be ready to pivot and that they may just consider going at a later point when the conditions have changed. So in the case of Israel in particular, we actually review those the safety and security conditions probably about 60 days prior to departure, which gives students enough time to be able to find another program if it ends up being canceled. But we try to be as transparent with students to let them know the likelihood of potential cancellations of particular locations. But again, some of this is unpredictable and these situations can be quite volatile.
Thank you. So that answers how Brown determines where students can go. Now, once they're there, if for some reason there was some sort of medical emergency or non-emergency even, how are emergency room visits or doctor visits handled overseas? And also, how does that work with Brown's health insurance?
Sure. So I mentioned a little earlier international SOS, which is a supplemental coverage for sickness and accidents that all study abroad students are automatically enrolled in. That coverage supports students while they're abroad. So the way that works is that it's a call service. So a student who's navigating some sort of challenge as it relates to health can just pick up the phone and call this number and tell them where they are and that they're a Brown student. And this person on the other end of the phone will guide a student to the appropriate resource that they might need, whether it's mental health counseling, whether it's a local clinic. Depending on the program that a student is on, let's say, for example, our Brown programs, or perhaps Adeline, you can chat a little bit more about this in particular. If a student's on a Brown program, we actually have on-site staff that are there to support students navigating that, which is an additional in-person layer of support that we're able to offer students on our programs. And then we also have partners abroad who also serve in a similar capacity. While they may not be a Brown staff member, they are someone who's dedicated to the students program, who are able to support students, and in some cases will go with the student to the emergency room and be able to guide them through that process. But Adeline, I'll turn it over to you if you want to share a particular example.
Absolutely. And I think that's exactly something I just typed to somebody as well. There are many different kinds of programs out there. Somebody was asking what's the difference, and I can't speak to all the out there programs, but I will speak for what Brown has, is that we do have teams on the ground always there, phone numbers that students can call at all times. We obviously tell them if this is a medical emergency, call the 911 equivalent right away. But the students are trained before they arrive on what numbers they have to call. They are also given all the numbers that they need for our staff on the ground there. When they arrive, they are also given these numbers. And when they're there, we have, in some cases, multiple layers of insurance that covers them. So not just ISOS, as Malik just said, but we in those of our students who go to Spain, for example, have local health insurance as well, that ensures that we're always covered in any circumstance. So just last week, I was dealing with a student who had to go to an emergency room because he fell. And I was alerted right away by my director, who is in the hospital with the student, and keeping us up to date and making sure that everything is going smoothly, talking to insurance and all that. Obviously, there's a lot of health information that is kept very private, but where we can be helpful, we are trying to facilitate the entire process. And I, here in Providence, am also aware of all the events that happen on site. So that's our commitment from the Brown CASA end of things. And for the summer programs as well, when we have faculty traveling with our students, we also make sure that they're covered in a very similar way. The faculty are trained, the TAs are trained, or anyone who's traveling with the students is aware of how to access all the supports that they have and what is available in country.
Thank you, Adeline. That certainly provides a lot of peace of mind, I think. I want to stick with the differences between CASA and the Brown programs. We had a few questions that came in that talked about, what's the difference in terms of how is my student going to be exposed to the local culture? Is it different whether it's a Brown program versus a CASA program? And similarly, what's the instruction like? Are they Brown professors? Are they local professors? If you can speak to a little bit about those details.
Sure, great question. So the philosophy behind Brown administered programs, whether they're Brown in Bologna, Paris, or any of the CASA programs that we administer, is one, it's a deep immersion experience. So, for example, going to Bologna and Paris, Barcelona, Granada, and Havana, we do expect you to have a certain level of the language, the local language requirements. Obviously, in Dublin and Melbourne, you can go with no language training beforehand. One of the reasons why we do that is because we want our students to not just be flying through and it's not vacation abroad, it's study abroad. And so we are going to enroll your students in local universities to take classes alongside local university students. So what I always say to students and parents who are talking to me about this is, imagine if you are taking astrophysics here at Brown in English, and you're going to go to the University of Bologna and you're going to take astrophysics in Italian. The difficulty level is amped up. And as Malik said, it's not a bad thing. This is exactly what it's designed to do. So here's what we do at our Brown CASA programs. We believe strongly in local immersion. We believe strongly that students should be learning from the spaces that they are, but they are accompanied by our staff and my teams, which all of them have decades of experience in supporting students through this very sort of tricky transition, because I, for example, have learned how to call a plumber in France very quickly through my study abroad experience. And I hope your students will never have to learn that, but we are there to teach and we are there to educate and we're there to help. We also make sure that our students are not just doing the going to class and going home. What we really want them to do is to engage with the community. So, for example, in Paris, every student has what we call an engagement personnel. So they do have to have some kind of personal engagement with the community, whether it is through an orchestra, as some of our students have done, whether it is through teaching, volunteering in a local school, or whether it is, doing gymnastics with the local gymnastics team, playing tennis. We've had students doing everything. We've had students doing research. We want them to go beyond the university space, because we think that's where, if you're really learning about a country and learning from the country, that's going to be that experience.
Mhm.
That's
And
fantastic.
I'll
Sorry,
just
go ahead, Malik.
I just wanted to add and highlight what Adeline shared is particular to our Brown and CASA programs, and some of the questions as it relates to what does it look like for students, what does the instruction look like? It all varies and depends based on their program. And that's a part of the conversation that we have with students. So our advisors, as they're having conversations one-on-one with students, will describe the academic culture of the particular program that they're considering, which may include discussion of to what degree are you doing direct enroll courses, where in which case you're sitting alongside locals and taking the coursework in the local language, or are you taking coursework alongside other study abroad students in a sort of cohort model. As it relates, I saw some questions about housing as well. Are students with homestay families, or are they in apartments or dormitories? All of the above. And it depends on the particular program that the student's going on. And again, that becomes a part of the conversation as it relates to comfort and challenge and immersion. What type of experience does the student want? And we sort of help take that as a consideration as a part of choosing a program.
Yeah, it really is a choose your own adventure. And I feel like parents, if there's one takeaway, get your students to get into either Malik or Adeline's office and start those discussions.
Absolutely.
I did want to touch on a question about language, because if they are going to take astrophysics in Bologna, how are we preparing students for the language that they'll be immersed in?
Absolutely, and this is perfectly related to the point of early planning. To that end, we have language requirements for particular countries. And we can drop the link to that has a breakdown of for each of the languages that we teach here at Brown, what the expectation is for the level that they'll need to be successful on the programs that we have available for students. Adeline, I don't know if you want to give examples of for your sites what the language requirement is and how it is that sort of comes into play on site.
Absolutely. So for Bologna, we're looking for 3 semesters of college level Italian before you go, more if possible, and we have many ways of encouraging more. So really, if you are a first year, if your student is a first year, there's a lot of time to catch up. And all our departments actually have intensive language, which counts for two credits, or they jump 2 levels or something like that. So there are many ways to do that. For French, we're looking for 600, which is advanced levels French, same with Spanish, advanced level Spanish in Havana, Barcelona. And you could actually go to Granada with 0 Spanish because we have intensive language training there that happens. Granada is one of the sites that sometimes I talk about in these presentations, but really sort of span the entire range. You have the super high level Spanish, super fluent translation, interpretation students that go there, as well as students who start from nothing. But we're happy to accommodate and teach and learn. And I think obviously Dublin and Melbourne have no language requirement. The other thing I would say is that it's also been very interesting to have some of our Brown students, remarkable polyglots, who will actually come to a place like Granada and say, I'll also take Arabic while I'm there because of the education that's available. So there's all sorts of different combinations of this that I've seen.
Oh, that's exciting.
And we also recognize that there are lots of ways in which students can learn languages. So while many of our requirements are articulated in this sort of form of a certain number of college level courses, we know that students can independently study and gain proficiency. So there is a pathway for students in most cases to be able to take a proficiency exam to confirm that they're at the right level. And for many of our programs, even prior to departure, they have that placement exam to confirm their language level. And then when they arrive on site, that there's a sort of another check to confirm that the student's at the proper level. So I say all that to say is that we spend a lot of time making sure that our students are at that right level so that a student can't arrive somewhere, quote unquote, by mistake and not be prepared from a linguistic perspective. So that's never a concern for our students. We spend a lot of time reviewing language proficiency with them. And again, there are so many different pathways to prove and confirm that.
Thank you, Malik. We had a great question come in about, are there students who've been through these programs who are available to speak to students who are interested in participating, and how would somebody get paired up with someone?
Yes, so we are very fortunate that we have a peer advising staff of 8 students. So they're here for the full academic year, and they represent a number of different types of experiences. So some of them have participated in Brown and CASA programs, some of them have participated in direct enroll programs, full year programs, English language programs, foreign language immersion programs. So on our website, I can drop the link in just a little bit as well. There's a list of our peer advisors, where they studied abroad, and any sort of specialties as it relates to advising conversations that they'd like to highlight are available. So you can email them directly, but they also host hours in our office, drop-in hours, and students are always welcome to stop by during those particular times, or they can schedule some time individually.
Great. Can you talk a little bit about what the difference is between applying internally for a Brown sponsored or managed program versus one that is an external program, and how that might look different to a student application process?
Sure. This is a really good question, and I'll start off by saying that for every student who studies abroad through Brown or at Brown, they have to apply through our application portal. And that is an internal application. And that's where we do the sort of eligibility checks. And from a sort of university perspective, we approve participation and say that you're making good academic progress, and we believe you're ready for this experience, meaning that they meet the eligibility criteria. But that way, I want to distinguish that is not admissions to the program. That's permission from Brown to say that you can do a study abroad experience in general. and then students subsequently have to apply directly to their study abroad program. So the application process varies based on the study abroad program. So for example, if a student's applying to a Brown or CASA program, their application for admissions gets reviewed by Adeline's team, and then they are formally admitted through to that particular program. And the same is true if they are applying to an external program. Their application is just reviewed by an external admissions team, and then they confirm whether or not the student also is able to apply and move forward. So at the beginning of the process, it's exactly the same for all Brown students. They submit an application on our portal, and then at the point of approval, the pathway sort of varies based on the type of program. So if they're going on a Brown or CASA program, they'll be connected to Adeline's team. If they're going to a program through an organization called IES Abroad, they'll be working with them. Or if they're doing a direct enroll like Oxford, for example, they'll be connected directly with the admissions team at the respective institutions, who then subsequently decide if a student is admitted or not.
Thank you. We have a lot of questions and we are running out of time. I'm just going to end on this one question that I think might broadly answer some of the other folks who are not going to get to. We've had a lot of questions from parents who my student studies computer science or engineering or is pre-med. Will they get something out of this? Will this fit with their program of study? Is this worth them, even thinking about? And if you could give your thoughts on, the realities of applying to study abroad with these some programs that might be a little bit more structured.
Yes. So I'll start off by saying that I'm absolutely biased, and I believe that there's an opportunity for development and a benefit for all students. The question is, do they have an interest in developing in this particular way? So for students who are studying CS or any sort of other concentration that may have a little bit more of a rigid and more specific curriculum in terms of requirements, that's a situation in which we just encourage, again, this early planning. So having the conversation with your concentration advisor early so that you can map out to what degree you're satisfying certain requirements here on campus that then will prepare you to satisfy a couple additional requirements while you are on study abroad. So I know that there were some questions related to engineering and computer science. I think I also saw some pre-med questions. The reality is students of all concentrations do study abroad, and it's possible, and they can make progress towards degree. It's just a matter of taking the time to plan both with their concentration advisors and a study abroad advisor to sort of make sure that there's the right match. And the last thing I'll share related to that is that there's an element of sort of trade-offs as it relates to finding the right study abroad program. So you may not be able to find the perfect program in Spain that allows you to satisfy all of your requirements. So there may need to be a negotiation where an advisor might say to the student, I know that you're really interested in Spain, but actually, based on what you're studying, Hungary might be a really good option. And the question is, to what degree is the student flexible, and do they want to arrange their schedule outside of that to be able to offer the flexibility to prioritize the location over the academic offering? And that's really up to the student to decide.
That's smart. Thank you, Malik. Adeline, do you have any final thoughts before we close it out?
Well, thank you for being interested in your student study abroad experience. We know you are so important to this, and we want to make sure that you also feel comfortable with the choices that your students make. So thank you for taking the time.
Malik, any final thoughts before we sign off?
Nothing other than I will drop my email address in the chat box, recognizing that we didn't get to all of the questions. So feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'm happy to get you connected with folks to answer your questions.
Great. And thank you all for being with us today. I did put an attendee survey into the chat. I hope you'll fill that out and let us know how we can improve the information we provide to you in the future. If you do have any other questions that aren't from Malik or Adeline, you can always send them to me at family@brown.edu. As I mentioned, we'll have those webinar recordings available soon, and we do hope that you will join us for other webinars coming up this week and next. But for now, I just want to say a sincere thank you to Malik and Adeline, and look forward to seeing everyone at the other webinars. Have a wonderful afternoon wherever you are in the world. Take care.